What's going on, guys? It's Mike and Ethan here from the Fantasy Degens. We're going to be doing our week one best bets. We know we've been showing a lot of love to the fantasy side of things, and we want to go out to you fellow Degens. So we're going to be doing our best bets for week one, things we should be betting now, things we think that we're backing our own money on these things. So we like a lot going into week one. E, do you want to start it out with our first best bet?
Yeah, for sure. So first best bet is going to be the Cowboys versus the Bucks, the over in that game at 51 and a half. That line is entirely too low for two high-powered offenses, a team in the Cowboys who played from behind a lot last year. And those first four games, if anybody remembers before Dak got hurt, they were scoring, 45, 50 a game. And that's because their defense was so bad. They're playing from behind, all that. And it's going to be similar to when they play the Bucks because the Bucks have an extremely good offense that can put up the points on a bad Cowboys defense.
I completely agree. I think the Cowboys have made improvements on their defense. You know, they went out and got some pieces in the draft, but they don't have any corners. They don't have any corners. You have Antonio Brown, you have Chris Godwin, you have Mike Evans. Who's going to guard these guys? They're so deep at wide receiver, and they have no corners to show for it. I think the Bucks are going to run all over them in terms of passing offense. I also kind of like the Bucks at -6.5, -7, or what they're at. But I think they're just going to run all over them. And then, they're going to start playing prevent defense. And all of a sudden, the Cowboys throw up those 20 points in garbage time like they did the first 4 weeks with Dak Prescott. And all of a sudden, you're at 60, 70 points. So I think 51.5 is, I've seen some 52s, I've seen some 53s, but I would bet them all. Like, even at 53, I'd still bet it.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to mention that I like the Bucks at 6.5 as well, but that's not a best bet.
Not a best bet.
I lean that way.
Yeah. And the Bucks are a great defense, don't get me wrong, but I just think when you come to garbage time, like when you're playing prevent defense, they're good. Like the Cowboys are still a great offense. They're still going to be able to get points on this Bucks defense. Yeah. And the Cowboys defense is still abysmal in my opinion. So I still think the Bucks are going to put up a ton of points. I think 51.5 is way too low. Like looking at other games, other totals, like it's the one I'm easily the most confident in. I love that at 51.5.
Yep, I agree.
All right, going into our next one. I know we like the Jets Panthers over 43. E, you want to start it off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the lowest line of week one is the 43 Jets Panthers game. And that's also one of the two worst defenses in the league as well. And not that, the Jets or the Panthers are really high-powered offenses, but that barely 6 touchdowns versus those defenses is not that difficult to do. And, I like the Jets' weapons and I like the Panthers' weapons all around. And I think they can put up some points against these defenses. And 43 is that's kind of last year recency biased, I think, for the Jets. And not really accounting for all the new weapons they've gained, new quarterback, new head coach, all that. I don't see this game being the lowest scoring game in the league in week one.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like usually, I know I have a betting philosophy to stay away from these garbage games, stay away from like two bottom end teams, in my opinion, because it's going to be a shit shoot no matter what. You have no clue what could potentially happen. But these aren't two teams that have a Derrick Henry. These aren't two teams that are going to want to run the ball a ton of times. I think they're two teams that are willing to throw the ball. You got two new quarterbacks. They're going to see what they have in these guys. They have a lot of weapons on offense in terms of the passing game, and their defenses are both terrible. So 43, I think, to me, is a clear over. You'll know as soon as you start to see me, like, learn more my betting philosophy. I usually lean towards the under. I know it's not like I know it's not the public play. I know a lot of people like to bet overs. I know it's more fun to bet overs. So to see me be on side of 2 overs is kind of rare, and I like both of those overs a lot. So Ethan could tell you about how much I love betting unders.
I can confirm betting with him is really annoying because it's just under. So
I love my unders.
It's good to see the overs today.
Yeah, I do love that over. I just think they have a lot of weapons. They have new quarterbacks. They're gonna want to see what they have in these guys, and defenses are terrible. So that's literally the only points I could really say about it.
Good weapons plus bad defense equals more than 43 points.
The one that I think I'm more high on, that I don't know how he really feels about it, but I'm interested to see his opinion, is the Colts -2.5 against the Seahawks. And it's the fact of, you look at Carson Wentz under pressure comparative to how he does with a clean pocket. He's a elite quarterback when he has a clean pocket, based off his grades, based off his statistics, everything. When he has a lot of pressure, though, that's where he begins to fold. That's where he begins to show the bottom 5 QB that he is. And the Seahawks literally have absolutely no pass rush. They had no pass rush last year. They didn't address it this year. They only had 3 draft picks in the class. And they had to rush Jamal Adams 80 times last year to create any sort of pressure. The Colts offensive line this year, comparative to what the Eagles were last year, is a lot better. They have 4 out of their 5 guys are potential Pro Bowlers. And I know they have Sam Tevy at left tackle, who is terrible, but I don't think he's going to get absolutely obliterated in this game. I know that, I think their offensive line is going to play extremely well, and Carson Wentz got a lot of time to throw, and whenever he does, he plays extremely well. And I do understand the Seahawks weapons. I do understand Russell Wilson. I do understand all the weapons on the offense, but I don't think it's going to outmatch that Colts defense. The Colts defense, in my opinion, is a top 5 defense alongside that. And I think the Colts are going to have a lot of success on offense. I love 2.5. I think they're easily going to win by a field goal, if not more. So that's my opinion on the Colts -2.5.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. There's a big difference in those front 7. Both offensively and defensively for both teams. And I think the Colts will be able to capitalize that and be able to shut down what the Seahawks, those deep balls, or like the Colts secondary versus that. Mm-hmm. And I think 2.5 with that little hook right there is a good line.
And I know you guys have been hearing all offseason, Frank Reich back with Carson Wentz, the guy that brought him to an almost MVP season. I think it's almost being overstated at this point, but it is something to look into. You have someone that understands Carson Wentz, has done extremely well with Carson Wentz, and is, I think, one of the most underrated coaches in all the NFL. I think Frank Reich is a better coach than Pete Carroll. I know Pete Carroll's potential, a Hall of Fame coach, but I love Frank Reich. I love the system he runs. I love the offensive system he runs. And I think that defense is really good. So I love 2.5 for the Colts.
Yeah, and this Colts team now is kind of similar to the 2017 Eagles when Carson Wentz had the almost MVP year. Before he hurt his leg, before he hurt his knee. But good O-line, decent weapons, good run game, Frank Reich. So we'll see what they can do, but I like 2.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's really similar where they didn't have elite wide receiver weapons on that 2017 Eagles, but they did have an extremely great offensive line, and their defense was top 5 in the league. And, that's the same thing. I think the biggest thing to say is no pass rush versus Carson Wentz. That's the biggest thing I can put is no pass rush versus Carson Wentz. He will win that matchup every single time. You look at how he does against teams I remember a couple last year, the year before, I'd always talk to E. I was literally bet the Texans against good pass rush. Bet against the Texans every time there's a good pass rush because they have no offensive line play. And that's Carson Wentz. Every time there's not a good offensive line play, he covers. He wins games. He does extremely well in those situations. So that's my opinion. Now you want to move on?
Yep.
All right, what are we going to? You want to go to the Bears? Or you want to go to the? Let's go to the Bears. Let's go to the Bears. So we got Bears 7.5 against the Rams, and I'm very, very, very bullish on the Rams this year. But I think there's things to be stated about the Rams. that are negatives. I could sit here and talk about all the positives. I love Matt Stafford. I love the addition of Matt Stafford. I think he's a far better quarterback than Jared Goff. And I still like Jared Goff. And I think there's things to look at. Like the offensive line play for the Rams in the last couple of years have been really poor. They lost John Johnson to the Browns and Troy Hill to the Browns. And they lost Brandon Staley, their defensive coordinator, to the Chargers because he became a head coach. So their defense is in line for regression, in my opinion. And I think the Bears are a very, very solid team. For them to be getting a touchdown, I mean, they were a borderline playoff team last year with Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. And even if Andy Dalton does start week 1, I do think that's an upgrade at the quarterback position, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with what they're saying. I think 7.5. That's plus 7.5. I don't know if I mentioned that. Plus 7.5 versus a Rams team. And the Rams, like you were saying, I do like a lot of their pieces. Matt Stafford's a beast. The 1-2 punch in a Cup and Woods. And Cam Akers taking his next step. But I really like Matt Nagy as a coach. Mm-hmm. And, from what it is right now, this is the largest spread in the day. And I think this is not the biggest difference in team talent of the day.
I completely agree.
And with the hook of 7.5, I would be very surprised if this game is more than a touchdown difference at the end of it.
I completely agree. So I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you feel better if you bet the 7.5? Right? Do you feel better if Dalton's starting or Fields is starting?
I don't think it matters to me either way.
I like 7.5 either way.
Really?
But I honestly
I think I prefer Dalton starting week 1.
Okay, that's interesting because I would probably lean the Fields way just for the fact that I think Andy Dalton will be the starter week 1. Unless Fields shows in training camp and preseason that, this dude's a way better quarterback than Andy Dalton. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So if it's a massive gap in terms of Andy Dalton versus Fields, I think Fields will be the starter week 1. But I think if it's relatively close, they will go with Andy Dalton. They're gonna put the veteran guy out there. So I think I feel better with Fields just for the fact that if that is the case, if he does start week 1, that just means that he is way above his learning curve. He has already shown that he's a much more dominant quarterback than Andy Dalton. So that's kind of my take on it. But Either way, I like the 7.5. Whether Dalton's starting, whether Fields is starting, I think Dalton is a much better quarterback than Trubisky or Foles last year.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And if Andy Dalton does end up starting this game, I like under 45 as well. That's just a little thing. But
mm-hmm. And the thing I always like to look at, I believe that I think good offenses do beat good defenses in my mind. I do believe that. I think like you look at how dominant the 49ers were, right, on defense when they went to the Super Bowl. But then they had a 50-point game against the Saints. You remember that game? That was insane. That were every possession would result in a touchdown. Those games, in my opinion, to me, defenses, it's not about good defenses beat good offenses. It's good matchups on defense beat good offenses. If you match up well against a team, it's kind of like the Rams defense against the Seahawks in the playoffs. The Rams defense matched up extremely well against the Seahawks, and that's why they struggled in that game, in my opinion, is because of the matchups. It worked perfectly in line for the Rams in order for them to dominate on the defensive side. And I think the Bears are kind of that way in this game. They have a great secondary. They have a good pass rush. And I just talked about how the Rams offensive line is kind of poor. They will get on Matt Stafford. They will create pressure. So I think the Bears defense matches up extremely well against the Rams too. So I think they will have success in this game. I don't think the Rams offense will be as potent week 1 as I project for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Great points. Great points.
So we can go on to the I think my favorite bet.
I know. I think this is the absolute best bet of the week.
My favorite bet. And I think, you know how I am. I love fading the public. You know that. I love fading the public. I love betting unders. I'm such a anti-public guy. I'm so about that. But I think this is my public play of the week in terms of the Ravens -4. Like every Joe Schmo in the world is going to see Ravens -4 and want to bet it. Am I wrong?
Not wrong.
But I love the Ravens week 1 -4. I think the Ravens have been a team that do not let go of the gas pedal. They're willing to blow out teams. I remember do you remember the game when they played the Jets and it was like 17.5? And I was like, 17.5 is pretty steep. And then it was like 40-6, and they're still like stomping on them, like still trying to punch in touchdowns against them, like putting everything they can to just blow out teams.
And I was scared to bet 17.5.
I was scared to bet 17.5. And I think the Ravens also have that playoff hangover. They're a team that has been extremely dominant week 1. You look at John Harbaugh with a couple weeks to prepare. Like that's like you look at John Harbaugh week 1 and against on bye weeks, the week after bye weeks. Like those are the two best times to bet John Harbaugh, because when he has time to prepare, he prepares a scheme that will dominate against any team in the league. Like I bet John Harbaugh. I bet the Ravens every single time when they're on a bye week. Post bye week, I bet them every single time, because they always prepare a great scheme and blow out whoever they're playing. And that's like a huge betting edge that you can use is look at these great head coaches when they do have time to prepare, because they will prepare a dominant scheme. Like we talked about Miami a little bit, and that was the one thing that did scare me is Bill Belichick having time to prepare for this game. And obviously Bill, spending the most money he's ever had, is invested into this team. He's saying that I think we can be competitive this year, So I think the Ravens week 1 with time to prepare is an absolute great bet. And I don't like a lot of the moves that the Raiders have made in recent times. Like their offensive line was really good. I mean, they played poor last year, but they ended up trading a lot of those guys away. They didn't make any real additions other than like Alex Leatherwood, who's just like he's all right in pass protection, but he's pretty mediocre in terms of he's really good in run blocking, but he's pretty mediocre in terms of pass protection. So I don't like a lot of the moves they made in this offseason. I think they actually became a worse team. Their defense is still abysmal, and I think the Ravens are a team to bet week 1. You want to take over?
Yeah, I just think to kind of build on what you said. First game of the season, they're going to come out swinging, and the Raiders have lost, their passing game, really. I mean, now you got Henry Ruggs and I'm blanking on his name. Who'd they sign?
They signed John Brown.
John Brown. And that's it. And I think the Ravens will be able to lock that down, force him to the ground, and
well, they still do got Brian Edwards, who I will do another pod about this. I'm very high on Brian Edwards. I think he is a buy low in leagues, but that is not a good receiving corner. I agree. But go ahead.
And I think the Ravens is an overall better team, just everywhere. I think every single position you could look at and say the Ravens are better there for pretty much both sides of the ball. And 4 points is extremely low. And even if you wanted to buy that down, really, to 3, you could do that as well. But
I'm honestly surprised that this line hasn't moved.
Yeah, it's been 4 for a while now.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, it kind of makes sense though, because I think that the bigger bettors will be on the Raiders, because who the fuck wants to bet the Raiders?
No.
And a lot of the public, they don't bet lines this time of the year, you know. But I will tell you the big thing about gambling is it is you do want to bet things you like. You do want to bet teams you like, teams you believe in. But the biggest thing is like over a long-term period of time, you want to bet in numbers. You want to find value in lines. And that's the big thing. That's why we came out with this pod literally 4 months before. I mean, sure, we're degenerates, so we do see lines and we do get a little horny to make bets. But the big thing about it is like we want to bet these lines previous to where they're going to move, because let's say the Raiders are, let's say it's 6-6 by the time the NFL season comes around, by the public it's all over it. Well, then we just lost all the value that we just gained by betting it at this time of the year. So betting lines well before, like when we're in the season, we bet lines all the time on a Monday or Tuesday, because you're gaining value by getting closing line odds is what it's called. But you're gaining value by betting lines at better numbers and betting lines where you think they're going to move to a certain side, and then you're getting value in that. So that's like a huge thing of why we're bringing out this pod right now. Is I'm surprised it hasn't moved. But on the same note, it's not too shocking, because I think the public, once they get around to it, once they start betting 2 weeks, a week ahead of the season, it will move in favor of the Ravens.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that jumped up to 5 or 6
Not at
come
all.
September 13th.
I mean, I don't know. Like I think I'm relatively bullish on the Ravens too, or not the Ravens, the Raiders. I'm not like the biggest Raiders hater out there, and I just think they're not a really good team. Like they're not. Like their defense is bad. Their offensive line got extremely worse. Their receiving core is kind of mediocre, and Derek Carr is a worse quarterback, like than Lamar Jackson. Like I just don't understand where they have any position of that. Like where they can. The only team that they match up against for some reason is the Chiefs, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yep. It's the only team they can play against.
It's weird. Like I think -4 is like I don't get it. Like I just don't get it. So here's our last one. It's not, I mean, it's probably our least favorite of all the 6 that we gave out, but I like the Giants at home as a pick 'em. What's your feeling on that?
And this was more your one. I wasn't feeling this as much, but I do like the Giants if I had to pick. But I like all the weapons they have. I think, whoever their quarterback ended up being for the Broncos, if it ends up being Drew Lock, I'm gonna slam the Giants. I was really rooting for Drew Lock. I really was. I liked him in Dynasty. I liked him. And he has all these great weapons, and he's just bad. He is not good at football. Now, Teddy Wedgewater isn't great either, but he can, get the weapons the ball, and they can do their thing. But I think, Saquon coming back, the line improving, I think that these Giant offense could put up a lot of points, even against a good Broncos defense and Vic Fangio. I like 42.5, over 42.5, just a little side bet as well.
Well, I'd say this. I think if the competition is relatively similar, kind of different with the Fields Dalton thing I brought up earlier. I think if it's close between Bridgewater and Locke, like there's no clear consensus there, I think they're gonna go with the high potential upside guy in Locke. Like if it's relative, like obviously if Locke looks terrible, sure they're not gonna start him. Bridgewater will earn that role. But if it's relatively close, I think it's gonna go to Locke. And if it's Locke, like I like the Giants. I think it's a much better quarterback as a pick 'em at home. Like I think I'm more bullish on Daniel Jones this year. I know his stats weren't great last year, but I think it doesn't really show how well he played in terms of that. Towards the second half of the year, the biggest thing I noticed with Daniel Jones was that he would just like try to force things, and he would try to make plays out of nothing. And you started to see that regress towards the second half of the year. He wouldn't do that nearly as much. I think the supporting cast while I do think it leans towards the Broncos, is relatively similar. Both great defenses, both good wide receiving cores. I mean, the Broncos do have an edge in offensive line play, but I do think the Giants are a great team that are being underrated right now and have a better quarterback in Daniel Jones than Drew Lock getting points or being a pick 'em at home. I just
Yeah, and I don't know if how many people know this fact, but like the home field advantage is supposed to be 3 points. So you're telling me on a neutral field that the Broncos would be favored by 3 points?
I just don't see that. I agree
I don't
completely.
see that as well. So
Yeah.
I just something to keep in mind.
That's something we want to do when we talk about more gambling podcasts. We're going to talk about like the way that Vegas works, just like kind of strategies of gambling, stuff like that. I do want to talk about more of that. I'm glad you brought up the point that home field is worth 3 points. They did a huge study on it, and they have found out that home field is worth 3 points. And every time you have Vegas, like if comparative to like it's going to make a 6 point swing. So you're telling me the Broncos would be favored by like 6.5 at home? That's ridiculous to me.
No, that is entirely like this is the sound like how ridiculous that sounds.
Yeah,
a 6 point favorite at home, please.
And I'll say that the same thing I was talking about the Bears. They match up well against the Rams. The Giants have a really good secondary. They have a really good secondary. Like they will match up really well against these offensive weapons and Noah Fant. You could put Jabril Peppers on Noah Fant. You have Adoree Jackson and James Bradbury to put on Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. Like it matches up pretty well, in my opinion, to those weapons, like to the strong suit of the Broncos offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if it comes down to running back play, I think we know as the better running back between Saquon and Melvin Gordon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously I'm lower on running backs. I don't really factor that in too much into my gambling opinion, but we haven't really seen Daniel Jones alongside Saquon. It's going to be interesting to see. I hope he's someone I'm really hoping he stays healthy the whole season because I do love Saquon. I do want him to be. I do want to see what Saquon ends up being out to be. I don't want him to be riddled with injuries his entire career. But yeah, I like all 6 of those bets. Do you have your favorite? You want to go to your favorite of those 6?
Yeah, the favorite of that 6 for me is Bears plus 7.5. If you can get it at plus 7.5 with the hook, I think that's my favorite bet. Or Cowboys Bucks over 51.5.
That was mine. I love the Cowboys Bucks over. I do have one more I want to throw at you. What do you think about this? This is a little. We haven't discussed this. We had our 6 that we decided on before the pod, but what do you think about the Vikings -3?
I know that is good value. I know it is. I wouldn't bet that. I know that's probably going to hit.
Okay, I'll give you Kirk. Okay, it's a 1:00 game. That's prime time for Kirk Cousins, right? Against bad defenses and bad teams, another prime time thing for Kirk Cousins, right?
Sure.
The Bengals, I love all the things the Bengals have done. I love the wide receiving core. I love Joe Burrow. I love the additions to make. I like Riley Reiff as a tackle. I think that I like Jonah Williams coming back. I am bullish on the Bengals. I think they're making good moves. I think they're a smart team. But I think they're honestly overrated in terms of the betting market. I still think they're a bad team. I think their defense is bad. I think they still have a lot of holes on offense. In terms of offensive line, I guess. But I think the Vikings are it's funny because how
biggest Vikings hater.
I'm the biggest Vikings hater you'll ever meet. I I am always fading the Vikings. I think there's a lot of times to fade the Vikings, and you're gonna hear it all year when we do our like week to week bets. Like you're gonna see me fading the Vikings all year. And I was right last year. I did not like the Vikings. I thought they were a lot worse team than the betting market made them out to be, and I was completely right. I bet them probably 5 or 6 times in a row through the first 5 weeks, and I made a lot of money off that. But I think the Vikings are a play week 1 against the Bengals.
I like over 48 more than -3. What do you think about that?
I don't dislike that. I think I like -3 better.
I think the Bengals could, that I do like their offense. I know Jamar Chase is probably getting overhyped right now, but I still like Tyler Boyd, still like T. Higgins, still like Joe Burrow. I like the tackles coming back, Joe Mixon coming back, or at least being healthier than he was last year. And then that defense is still terrible, like you were saying.
Mhm.
The Vikings, I'm not sold on their defense either. I mean,
not at all.
It's better, but that's still bad. And Kirk is fine as a quarterback. He does do well against bad defenses, but it's really about Dalvin. And I think Dalvin can run all over the Bengals with, Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen supporting that pass game and scoring touchdowns. I don't know, 48. I'd probably get that down to 47.5 because I like buying hooks. But that's interesting. That's more interesting to me than the 3.
Oh yeah, I like the 3 better, but I do agree. I think that's something me and Don, another person on the fantasy degens, we talked about that, about 47.5 being over. I kind of like that a little bit. Damn, man, I need to go back through these lines and find an under at this point. I can't with
Too
all
many
you
overs.
I can't. All you guys just want me to bet overs. And I just got to go back through and find an under. I think there's an under I liked.
Steelers Bills under 50.
God, the Steelers games I feel like are always like 10-10 or like 30-30, like 40-30. I feel like
Dolphins
that's always
Patriots under 45.
Yeah, I actually do like that one.
And just for context, Dolphins Patriots is a higher over under than Jets Panthers.
That's insane.
Doesn't make a lot of sense.
That
just sells you on that Jets even more.
I think an interesting under. All right, this is the last thing I'm gonna say because we gotta wrap it up. But interesting, I think it's like 44.5 in the Chargers football team. I think that's an interesting one.
For the under, or the over?
The under, like, because I think a lot of things are pointing positive towards the. A lot of people focus on the offensive side of the ball, and I think a lot of things are pointing upwards towards both of those teams in terms of the offensive side of the ball. But I think both of those defenses are extremely good, and they're both extremely slow paced. I mean, we haven't seen Ryan Fitzpatrick in the football team. Like, we haven't seen that, and he's someone that's willing to take shots downfield. But I think both defenses are extremely good, and I think based off previous years, they've both been very slow paced offenses. So that's an interesting one, man.
That's just it.
But
I could be interested by that.
We're throwing out bullshit right now. We have our 6 that we love. If you follow the 6, I feel very confident in you. This is something that we've backed our own money with, and those 6 are something I'm interested in. The other ones that we've just previously talked about are something that we're just like, just kind of philosophy, kind of like ideas that we're kind of throwing out. But those aren't things that I've personally backed up with my money. Like, I have not backed up the under in the Chargers game. I have not backed up the Vikings yet. Or the under in the Dolphins game or stuff like that. But those are just like interesting to me. I don't know, based off the lines. But I kind of like the Bills too at 6.5. Kind of like the Bills.
So
I think the Steelers fucking suck.
I think we gotta wrap it up. I think we got enough.
Yeah,
enough money out there. Don't make me spend any more.
Sounds good, brother. Well, anyways, that's our week 1 best bets. Come and follow us up. come put your money where your mouth is. You know. You got anything left to say?
No, good luck. Everybody, help all your bets hit.
All right, have a good one, guys. Peace.
Are you drunk?